As I'm starting on the little Bo Peep pieces for our quilt, I've got all the pieces cut out, and you can kind of see there I've got them cut out and ready to prepare. But I wanted to show you when I have corners like this, what I find helpful is to just clip, make sure you can see here, is to, there we go, is to clip a diagonal across those corners. And then when I fold them, when I come to that part where I'm going to fold them, I don't end up with as much bulk underneath underneath where that corner has to be folded. So just a little trick there as you are working on getting these Bo Peep pieces ready. I'm going to go ahead and prepare them using the Applique tools, and then I'll be ready to start putting them on my quilt. For laying out the pieces of our little Bo Peep applique, I want to show you this trick I learned, because as you've noticed, it's getting harder to see through all the layers, and that's only going to get worse as we start adding all the pieces on this little Bo Peep part. So what I've done is I've taken just a piece of tissue paper. I like to get the tissue paper that comes for gift wrapping because it's nice and long. And what I have done is I have, before I added this piece, I laid it out on top of the pattern. The pattern's underneath here. And then I taped it, lining everything up. I taped it up above where my fabric is going to have to go to do this, to lay pieces on in the place. And so it's taped there so I can lift it up and put it back down, and it's gonna, as I line it up, I line mine up with the edge of my pattern piece paper here, over on, let me see if I can show you this. So I've lined my edges up here with my pattern, so I know if I have this lined up in this corner and on this edge here where the two papers come together, I know I have it lined up the way I need it to go. So I've got little things in the way there that's making that awkward, but there, so it's lined up, and so I know I have it in the right place. And then I also used the light box to make sure that I had my the fabric that I'm working on, had that lined up the way it needs to go also. So I'm going to scooch this up here where you can see, get things lined back up. And then what you can do now is, I'm using these are little Applique tweezers, but any tweezers will work. You could also use your fingers. I just find this a little easier, so I can grab a hold of that piece and put it where it needs to go. And I think I'm going to adjust a little bit more. And you don't have to have it exact, but you know, just kind of have it in its general location. And I can flip my tissue paper out of the way and go ahead and put a pin to hold that in place. And then I can flip my tissue paper back down, get things lined up again, and it looks like I looks like I moved that when I pinned it in place. So let's try that again. Make sure I'm still lined up good here. I got this idea actually from, when I first started doing applique, I was drawing a blank on who did it, but they showed using a piece of clear plastic, the thick plastic that you can get from the craft shops and all, and just putting that on your pattern and drawing out with an ink pen, drawing on top of that, and then using that, basically the same idea that you have this, that you can see that you work underneath. And so let's see if I can do a better job of pinning this in place this time. looks better. And I'm going to go ahead, since I'm, you know, this way I don't have to switch my black thread. I'm going to go ahead and put that second little shoe in place here. Okay, so I'm going to stitch those down and then come back and put the next piece in place. But I wanted to show you that how the tissue paper, well, how a pattern that you lay on top, however you decide to do it, tissue paper or the plastic or whatever. Tissue paper is cheap, so I like that idea. How that can help you as you're laying these pieces on top and it gets harder to see the pattern underneath. Alrighty, so I've got the little shoes pinned down in place. Let me take this pin out, I left that in there. And I've lined things back up again, my edges of my pattern and all. And while I was stitching the little shoes down, I remembered where I learned the overlay idea, and I've kind of played with it and made it my own. But the overlay idea came from Becky Goldsmith with Piece of Cake. She does applique. I learned when I first started doing applique, I watched a lot of her videos to try to figure out what to do and how to do it. And so the overlay with plastic is one of her ideas, and she has a video out that shows that, and I'll try to remember to link to it when I post on the blog this week, so you can see how she uses the plastic overlay, because it's a neat idea. So this is just my cheap version of her idea of the overlay that we're using for doing the applique. So now I'm ready to put the little bow here, and whoops, I'm just gonna kind of put it roughly into place and then make sure I'm lined up again, and then I can sneak in here with the tweezers and kind of just get it put into place. And I think I want to move it a little bit more. Get the tip here up. Make sure I'm still lined up. And you can see how that's looking pretty good for excuse me, for placement. So I'm going to pin that in place now by moving the tissue out of the way carefully and getting one of my pins. And you know, I kind of put one in place and then add pins around after I've kind of stabilized it where it needs to be. So I put this pin in. And before I move on, I'm just going to double check, make sure I'm still lined up well and I didn't move out of place, and looks pretty good. The main thing I want to be sure of is that I have this edge over here tucked nicely inside what's going to be covering it up, and so I have that taken care of, and I'm ready to stitch that one down. So I'll go work on that and then come back to put another piece in place. Okay, I neglected, I put in piece 27 and forgot to put in piece 26 up here, so I'm going to stick that in here now. kind of roughly where it goes. And grab my tweezers here and make sure I'm still lined up before I put it in place. Okay. This one I'm just going to kind of center because I've made it a lot bigger than it needs to be, so I don't have to deal with a teeny tiny piece. And basically want to make sure I have that section in there and then extending both ways, which it looks like I've done. So I'm going to pin that into place and stitch it, and then I'll be ready for our piece 28, which is going to go in there. And then I'll come back and in the next video I'll show you how I prepare the staff that goes next after that.